Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here just trying to make this world seem more normal. Does it ever happen? God, no. God, no. And is it going to happen tonight? You bet your ass it's not going to happen tonight. I love that fact, so glad to be here tonight with you all and to bring these two guests on. I am completely honored, and I am been looking forward to this episode for a while now. So, without further ado, let me introduce my guests, Leslie and Stephen Shaw, UFO
Hi.
investigators, and
Hey.
all, and I gotta say, authors of the incredible book "Who They Are and What They're Up to," which I only read snippets of it, folks, but I am dying to read this book in full because it sounds amazing. How you both doing tonight?
Super. Thank you so
Quite
much for
well.
having us.
Quite well. Oi.
It is my pleasure to have you both. It is, as I told you before we went live, it is far and in between we get UFO investigators in this show. Honestly, I think my last one was probably a year ago, and it's a shame because they are some of the greatest conversationalists and some of the most interesting people with the best experiences you'll ever meet. So I love having them on the show, and tonight's gonna be fun. But before we get into all the fun, I gotta ask the same question I ask everybody when they start the show, and you guys can answer this in whatever order you want. It's up to you. But what got you into the paranormal?
I think I'll take that this time. About the age of 30, I decided to start, which is about 33 years ago now. I was a state licensed acupuncturist here in California, and I had grown up in a family that came from wartime England, World War II, and we had this family spirit guide called Old Glegley that had been with the family bloodline for three generations, and things were just not starting to add up as far as like that there was just a spirit guide that was a ghost, and things were happening to me that just didn't make sense. So that's when I really kind of started my research, really about in 1991. So that was my motivation. I needed to find some answers, some closure to things that just didn't make sense to me.
Stephen had the so many experiences with the paranormal in his youth, and basically it has never stopped. And I had never had anything, and I was so jealous, to be honest. But then in 2005, I saw my first UFO, and that really is life altering right there. Because now I had to know. I had to start researching, what are these things? Who are flying these things? What do they want? And so that was about 18 years ago, and that's when I began to really start researching and following, and that's about that's about when it started for me.
Well, I mean, I that's one hell of an entry into the paranormal. I'll tell you that much.
Hmm.
But let's before I don't even need to ask my second question on this one. I already know that because it's gonna be tons of answers for that throughout the show, I'm sure. But let's step back a little second to this supposed spirit guide that followed your family for three generations. That kind of got me curious when I read that in your bio. I was like, huh. I'm like, that's so. It started three generations ago. I mean, did that start in the early 1900s or 1800s? I'm not that
It
generations
started
always
with
throw me
my
for a loop.
with my great grandparents. That would be pre World War I. It started in Germany with the Newmans. The family bloodline was the Newmans. At that point, they were half German Jew, and they were spiritualists. At least one of them was. And then um,
And they're automatic writers, all the women in his family.
yes, I've tried it. I don't like it, but my sisters currently do that in the UK right now. In fact, they do
They're ghost
they're
hunters in
ghost
the
hunters,
in
seen her
northern
husband.
England.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're ghostly locations, I think it's
yeah,
called.
ghostly
Yes, yeah,
locations.
northern England. But for me, so what happened was that the family moved from Germany to England, to northern England, and then my grandmother married Harry Rowe, so she became a Rowe. And then my mom, she married my dad, Shaw, so she became a Shaw. But my mom learned how to automatic write from her mother and her mother's sister. and they did spiritual type stuff, table levitations. I mean, the real stuff, not the crap,
Not the fake
not
stuff.
the fake stuff. Yeah, my mom proved it to me many different times. As an example, when I was 9 years old, she picked me up from elementary school, and she was just in tears. And I said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" This is 1969, by the way. So I said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" She said, my mother just died in England. I said, well, how did you know that? He says, well, I was contacted by, I went, I did automatic writing, which already knew she did automatic writing. We all knew she did it. She would go into a trance, and she would just kind of be, it'd be one of these things where she didn't have any control over it. She would just have this feeling that she had to do it, like she was being contacted. And sure enough, she said, she wrote it down. They said, my mother has just died. And about 2 days later, we got a call from England.
The official word arrived.
The official word.
Yes.
Again, this is 1969, so the communications aren't like today. So anyway, so yes, sure enough, she was right. My dad already knew that she already knew. And the same thing happened when my grandfather died and my uncle Clifford. She told us first. So this is something I grew up in a family that it was a given that we had this protector, this family spirit guide that would show up from time to time, and for different reasons. Like my uncle Douglas, who was a Griffiths, his life was saved in post World War II in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. He was in the Royal Air Force, and he was a pilot. In fact, he learned how to fly before he learned how to drive. So, anyways, he was sleeping in this cot in this multi-man tent, because I did myself. I did 6 years in the Navy, so I've set up multi-man tents, so I know what they're like. So he told me this, and I said, okay. So he was awakened in the middle of the night by this tall black entity. He said he looked like a tall black man wearing a red fez, and he said, Douglas, you need to get up and leave right now. If you don't, you're going to be killed. And so he just intuitively knew that this was the family spirit guy. So he got up, got out of the tent, and within about a minute or two later, a rebel party came in with machetes and some guns and killed a few of the officers. And he told me this, with a very straight face. This is the guy who grew up in wartime England. He was no nonsense guy. So, and he just like, okay, so this just confirmed what I heard from my mom and my dad. So I actually started being visited when I was 3 years of age, where I would commonly be visited by this invisible entity that would jump on my chest and my stomach in the middle of the night, kind of playfully, like a cat, but it wasn't menacing or anything like that. But there was nothing there.
An invisible cat.
Invisible cat. And so, I just accepted it because I knew that we had a family spirit guide.
And then he would, as Stephen was relaying these experiences to me over the years, I started to realize that it sounded more and more, it sounded like the alien abduction phenomenon.
Yes.
Because the family would see strange things, something strange, and frequently be frightened by it.
And then black out.
But then they would black out, and you don't just fall asleep when you're frightened, right? You can't fall asleep when you're frightened. Your heart's beating, and you're sweating, and your eyes are dilated. You're scared.
Yeah, I was a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture here in California for 20 years, and studied the brain a lot and treated many, many, many people, including dogs and cats. Actually, dogs and cats are really good patients.
Yeah.
There's no placebo. There's no placebo effect.
Yeah.
Either they like you, either it works or it doesn't. But anyway, so I started to find that things weren't adding up. That okay, this is over 100 years of this entity or these entities that have been following us to Germany, to England, for me currently in California to 6 different homes. Okay, and it's just has been I had actually my whole family back in 1979, January of 1979. We all 5 of us experienced over a period of a week or in 2 different locations. 350 miles apart, we experienced these things that culminated with something that I've never been able to explain, and that's why I really think I do know that it is an alien intervention. It's not a spirit guide, and
yes,
I can relay that if you like.
We in just a moment, but the family, they were a bit reticent to talk about it, and we finally. And we were about somewhere in our 40s when we got together with the family and actually started trying to compare notes and find out what was going on. And Stephen's brother Philip actually saw one of the times he blacked
My
out.
younger brother, yes.
He saw a gray alien standing in his room looking at him, and then he blacked out. So we began to surmise that that is who the spirit guide really is. And frequently, the family members would see this spirit guide kind of as a shimmery, shimmery being of some kind.
But always tall.
And we've surmised. Well, no, the gnomes were short.
Oh, that was when we were children.
But
Yes,
when they were children, the boys saw them as gnomes, garden gnomes, one time. But whenever the memories are kind of shimmery, I believe that's a sign of memory tampering. A lot of people, they'll remember their abduction experiences in part, but then when they get to the face of their abductors, they can't remember, or they'll remember it as something else other than what it is.
Right.
Like the boys saw them as gnomes one time, and
well, my brother saw them repeatedly. I saw them once.
Yeah.
That I remember.
But go ahead now with your
experience.
Oh yeah. Well, before you get to that for a second, gotta of course pay homage to my watchers. Hey Shannon, glad to see you watching as always. I don't know if you guys have, because I believe we run some of the same circles. So I don't know if you know Shannon Boomgard. She's a psychic medium who runs on a lot of the paranormal groups on Facebook and stuff that I'm part of.
Hi,
she always likes to watch these shows. And she says usually when you can see aliens, you can see ghosts. She thinks they're from the same realm, and that's why. Which, possible. And according to Shannon, the shimmer is the portal. That's why there's a shimmer. It's the portal they come through.
I've noticed though that when they talk about seeing, like, for his mother saw she saw a basket come through the ceiling and land and open up, and all these Chinese people in Chinese regalia jumped out and were beckoning her and dancing around. And again, the memory is very shimmery.
This is Year of the Dragon, 1988, I believe it was. So, but let's not go down that yet. I want to clear this up with Shannon. Okay. All right. So I'm going to make sure that it's okay. There may be some portal activity here, but what ended up happening to me was not a ghost. Okay. So it started out the very first night. My dad came in for breakfast. We were both cabinet makers at the time. My dad was a master cabinet maker from UK. And he said, Stephen, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night. And I just kind of like shoved it off, said, okay, Dad, you're probably like imagining something. The next night, I was reading this book by Paramahansa Yogananda called Metaphysical Meditations. And I was really, I was studying Tai Chi at the time, starting to study Tai Chi. And I gave my dad this book, said, hey, Dad, you should read some of this stuff. And about half an hour later at 9:30 at night, he came into my room with this puzzled expression on his face. He said, Stephen, I'm hearing a silver bell by the fireplace. Myself being a lifelong musician, I know what a silver bell sounds like. So anyway, so I went in there and said, sure enough, there's a silver bell being rung inside the 2x4 wall by the fireplace. So I got my sister, who was wanting to have nothing to do with this. My sister was 13 at the time. I was 18. And she said, where's that silver bell coming from? And sure enough, we all heard the same thing at the same time. We banged on the wall. It kept on going on for a good 10 minutes at least. We looked up the chimney flue, didn't stop, and then it just stopped. And about 10 minutes later, the next morning, my mom called from the house we were building up in Sonora, California, which is in the woods, and she said, which was our tradition every morning to talk, right? My brother was going to school up there, and she said, the funniest thing happened, Jeffrey. The phone rang, but Philip said the phone didn't ring. I heard this bell ringing, so I picked up the phone, and there was this voice on the other end saying, I am the invisible Ambichi, or something to that effect. And my brother swore, said, no, the phone didn't ring, but my mom did pick up the phone. So
she heard a bell too.
At the same time that we were hearing the bell in our house, Dion Fortune, a famous psychic from the 1920s in England, said that about silver bells you can hear sometimes. But anyway, the next night I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I was awakened by a whizzing sound in the air, like a whoosh, whoosh, and I just looked down the hallway, and I thought, well, maybe it was a bug or something like that. Just kind of tried to ignore it. And I tried to go back to sleep, and then the base of my bed was pushed 2 times. Shove, 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 kind of gentle. So trying to be logical about it, I tried to ignore it, thought it was an earthquake, and then it got shoved twice again, and then one more time, a lot more vigorously, and then I got tapped on the shoulder like somebody's index finger tapped me on my right deltoid 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. By this time, I'm both scared and really annoyed. So I whirled over and I said, "What?" And there was something there. I couldn't see it. And then I just black out. Now, the next night, I did not want to sleep in that room. I was afraid to sleep in my own bedroom. So I said, I'm going to sleep in my work clothes. And I'm going to sleep on the couch in the living room. So that's what I did. So I went to sleep on the couch and I woke up about 5:30 in the morning. Again, this is January, and it was dark. But I looked at my piano because I'm a pianist and an accordionist. I played multiple instruments. So I was thinking about what I was going to play that day, and I heard the little fountain in the other room. I was awake. I was alert. Didn't want to get up too early. And this being, tall being, a blue-white light, about 6.5 to 7 feet tall, came from the front door from behind me, about 25 feet away, and moved in about 1.5 to 2 seconds, bringing all the blue-white light into the living room with this being.
It filled the room.
It filled the room with blue-white light, and it stopped by my right side, and immediately the right side of my body was split in half, in the sense that the right side of my body, I had no movement whatsoever. Okay, not in a scary way, but I could not move my body. I couldn't even I couldn't close my right eye. My right eye was open, but I could not close my right eye. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to see the family spirit guide, Old Glegley, that I've heard about since being a kid. And so I was like, part of me was saying, wow, I'm going to see Old Glegley. But the other half of me is saying, dude, you can't move. You can't do anything. You can't move. You can't get up. And so part of me was really excited, and the other part of me was like really scared.
Like a tickle of fear.
And the entity bent down to my right ear, and it said from outside, not inside my head, but outside, it said, "Hi, Steve." And I couldn't tell whether it was male or female, but I just was like, I was like perplexed. I said, "I want to see your face." In my mind, I want to see your face. And I think it got the idea that I was like a little bit maybe too scared. And after maybe 5 or 10 seconds, it left. And then I just, once again, I black out. I told my dad about it at breakfast time, but the thing that really makes it that it's not a spirit, okay, is that 6 hours later, it was 11:30 in the morning, and my dad and I were getting hungry for lunch. So I decided to reach into my right hand side pocket and pull out the coins and the money I had, put it on the table, and all the coins, the standard American coins, this is 1979, and they're all magnetized. I could pick up the coins by the edge, by the face. My dad could too. This is 6 hours after it happened. Now, the final night was I decided to go back to sleep back in the bedroom. I decided, oh, screw it, So I went back to sleep in the bedroom. And my dad this time was awakened by seeing this wall of blue-white light, intense blue-white light energy that was outside of my door. And he thought, okay, I've been through wartime England. I'm going to get up and see what is going on, right? So he's getting out of bed, and this voice inside his head said, Jeffrey, go back to sleep. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Just go back to sleep. And that's what he did. And I have no memory of that at all. As far as I know, I have no clue whether I was abducted, whether I was contacted. I have no clue about that.
We surmise, though, that he was taken. And while he was taken, he was subjected to a strong electromagnetic field of some kind that would have caused the magnetization of the coins. And, American coins are specifically designed not to be magnetic, so that they can vending machines and things,
Go through TSA, yeah.
And so it must have been a very powerful field for him to experience. And because the phenomenon followed the family all around the world, it seems to us that it's not so much a haunting as it is, they're tracking the family and preying on the family. With our research, we in the beginning of our research, the theory was that the aliens, about the abduction phenomenon, the aliens were just curious about us, just interested in scientifically, and we're going to take a few people, take a few samples, put people back, no big deal. But that turns out to not be what was going on. What happens instead is that once they find a family or a strain of DNA that they like, they take those people again and again and again and again through their lives, and then they'll start taking their children and grandchildren after them. Once, if it meets the specific criteria of what they're after. And we don't really know for a fact why they take the people they take so much, except that we looked at the data, and the data shows that it's mostly a Caucasian phenomenon.
Hmm.
They took a disproportionate number of Basque persons, and therefore, and the Basque have the highest incidence of Rh negative blood types. And so, consequently, the data shows that they take an exaggerated number of Rh negative persons.
Percentage-wise, yes.
Percentage-wise. And also, like the DNA, they also take green-eyed people more often, much more often than they is representative in the population base. Green eyes are a mutation in the humans,
That's
a recessive trait in humans. So for whatever
Yeah.
reason, they're after that in particular as well. I made the analogy in the book. It's kind of like a cow. They're not so much taking samples for scientific purposes as they're harvesting a product of some kind. They need genetic material from these particular strains
Oh,
of people uh, in large
that's
quantity.
that's funny you say that because right as you're saying that, Shannon actually commented, yes, they can breed with Rh negatives, which
That makes sense.
which
And
kind of
Yes,
makes
yes.
sense.
yeah, yes,
And
and the DNA.
I just want to
Sorry.
say before I lose this in my head,
Mhm.
because I actually 100% agree that it doesn't sound like a haunting. It does sound like an extraterrestrial phenomenon because a few things you pointed out to me stuck out. The fact that the kids saw them as gnomes when grays are known to be able to shapeshift to make people feel more comfortable when they come in the room. I mean,
Right.
I've heard stories of them of somebody seeing the monkey from Dunstan Checks In walk into the room at night. I've heard stories of a T Rex in in a lab coat. So
Uh,
I feels like Greys do this to make children more comfortable so that they don't freak out when I mean, if they see a 8, 9 foot tall gray alien walk in the room, they're gonna freak the hell out. I mean, if
Yeah,
they see something,
yeah,
go ahead.
exactly. My brother, when he was between the ages of 6 and 8, he slept in the closet in our bedroom for 2 years, and I said, Philip, why are you sleeping in the closet? No, he didn't want to sleep in the bunk bed. So, well, I'm afraid of the little men that come in the middle of the night. And I remember when I was about his age that I had seen when I was sleeping in the top of the bunk bed, I saw these like 4 or 5 these little shimmery, they look like garden gnomes that were walking into the room. And I didn't feel threatened by them, but I thought it was really, really weird. And I hadn't really thought about it until Philip, and I asked my brother Philip, I said, why are you sleeping? And so I understood why he was sleeping there, because he was afraid
yeah.
of these little gnomes. And then he was the one who actually saw the tall gray that was at the other house we were building in Sonora, California, when he was 16 in 1982. Was one of the things he had 3 things happen to him.
Yeah,
One,
it seems to come in clusters,
yeah,
like for some reason,
he was 16. The first night he was awakened by these 2 bright white lights outside of his bedroom window, and the bedroom window didn't face any type of a street. We were in the woods. There was a creek down there and tall trees, and there was a drop off. So they were literally just hovering there in the air. He looked out, and my brother, type of guy who was teaching calculus at a
scientific minded,
college level, and
Yeah.
he was
Brilliant.
a brilliant man, and he looked at these things and he couldn't figure out what they were, and then he blacked out. So the next night, uh, he was awakened by this, he called it a scrabbling sound underneath his bed, and he just thought it was our cat. We had a couple cats, so he was used to like petting the cat, and he went down to pet the cat, and his wrist was grabbed by a human or a humanoid hand, and he blacked out.
Instantly blacked
You know,
out.
if
Yes.
you're being grabbed by somebody, you're not going to black out.
Also, he was terrified
Yeah.
when he got, he felt the hand on him instead of a cat, right? And he said his adrenaline spiked,
And then he blacked out.
but it didn't matter. He blacked out anyway.
And then
right?
it was the third night where he was awakened by seeing the tall, slender gray.
Yeah, 6 foot tall or so.
6 foot or so taller.
One of the taller
And that
ones.
was in his room doorway, and he just blacked out. So that's when we kind of figured out who this old Glegley character was. I mean, people had seen him multi-generational, but always tall and skinny.
I think of him as the family's handler,
Yes.
so to speak.
Well, funny enough, because Shannon sometimes gets senses readings for my guest, and I guess she must have got a reading that your brother is a hybrid and that they check on him from time to time.
They certainly checked on him from time to time.
He's unfortunately dead since 2017.
But he did, when you say checked on, one time he built a house kind of in remote forest area up in Sonora for himself, and he had a long deck alongside of it. And he told me that when we were visiting that he was getting these orbs regularly going up and down his deck, back and forth, and looking in looking on his windows.
His front deck, yes.
And for weeks he ignored it, he said, but then he finally went outside and confronted it. He said he got the courage up to go outside, and he just stood there looking at it, and it was at the other end of the deck, and then it suddenly rushed at him and went through his body. He felt it going through his body, and he said it came out of like the back of his neck, near the top of his back. And he pointed to it, and I looked, and sure enough, he had a bruise back there, a round bruise.
About a baseball size, roughly. About a baseball size, yeah.
I think that's a scenario where they're checking on him. And they, to add to Shannon's question there, Stephen was a Tai Chi master for most of his life, teaching it. And he, Tai Chi is a moving meditation, and it helps open the chakras of the body. And when you open your chakras, you'll start to astral project more. You'll get the separation of the soul and the body, and you're able to go traveling. And it's a lot of fun. I started doing it myself, and I enjoyed it. But Stephen, it seemed like whenever the veil would come down and he'd be in the astral plane, they would be on the other side waiting for him and kind of harassing him. So it's almost like they communicate and with us on a psychic level. And as soon as he enters the astral realm, they're able to approach and communicate via
yeah, again, it's not always bad, but frequently it is. And it's, I still get visitations. So last couple months I've had a couple. One was this very, very large entity, well over 6 feet tall, with golden eyes, that was in my bedroom,
staring at him.
First thing in the morning, just looking at me. And I decided, I'm going to ask it what's going on. So I said, what do you want? What do you want? And eventually it went away. I can't remember. I may have blacked out again. But then a few months ago I had to go to the bathroom about 6 in the morning. So I'm a 250-pound guy, so I don't just jump out of bed. But this particular time, I jumped out of bed and I just went right to the door, just like I was 160 pounds, like I used to be, And I was like trying to open up the door, and I couldn't open the door. So
because he forgot his body in the bed.
Okay, I forgot my body. So
yeah, it's over there.
I turned around and I looked, and I went back over to my body, and I thought, did I just die? So I pushed on my body, tried to push my body a couple times, and I said, okay, I better just lay back down. So I laid back down, and then I got up the regular way. And I had another experience a couple months ago where I felt this being get into bed with me. It wasn't Leslie, because she was watching TV. And I just said, okay, what do you want? Because I know it wasn't Leslie, because it just wasn't Leslie. So I just tried to ignore it. I've had so many things happen to me, Jeremy, over my life, that it's just like I just get, I get used to it. So anyways, I woke up again around about the same time the next day, and I was going to get out of bed, and I could feel something rustling next to me. And then I heard from outside, from my ear on my right side, something say in a Asian voice, say, husband. Okay, I said I knew number one that it wasn't Leslie because she wasn't there, but it was just like husband. And what the heck was that? So
I'm jealous. They're
and
flirting with him now.
I've had at multiple different houses. I've had frequently when I'm really getting to be really relaxed and going to sleep. I'll have a knocking behind my head on the wall, like just very, very distinctly, three knocks, just like somebody's knocking with their fists on the wall. Or sometimes it'll be a door slamming, or it'll be a plate glass breaking,
Shattering. Yeah.
or sometimes it'll be people's voices, or sometimes it'll be a musical instrument. I haven't had it as much as I used to have it in the last couple of years, but the previous house we were at, it was pretty common. It was,
Yes.
and it's just, but this has been throughout my most of my life. It's like I gotten so used to it. I mean, I probably have that knocking sound at least 100 times that I can think of. It's
So as we start researching the abduction phenomenon and realizing that it's not so much just taking samples, they're harvesting product from us. We started to try and surmise as to why. And I've made the analogy in the book, like it's kind of like a farmer and his cow, right? The cow he puts out in the field to generate milk, eat grass and generate milk. Then he abducts the cow and takes the milk and puts it back out into the field so it can make more milk. And it seems like that's what they're doing. But with us, it's more like they're after our eggs and our sperm. And they want to give us time to regenerate those things before they take us again and again and again. And like I said, I feel like old Glegley is the family's handler. And just like a farmer and his cow, the farmer also protects his cow. And we found that O'Glegley has protected the family several times. He told you about Doug's story, but Stephen has been saved from drowning, and it was sort of a spiritual experience because the lifeguard up and vanished right after he saves him. And nobody knew where the lifeguard went or saw where he went or anything. And so we're talking about a long beach here, So
it's what he did. There was not even Michael Phelps or Mark Spitz could get to me as I was under the water about 75 feet at least from the shoreline, and this guy was at the lifeguard tower flirting with three girls, and my arms. It was the only time in my life where my arms, I could not move my arms. My arms were, because it was April Fool's Day of all things, April Fool's Day, 1992, Southern California beach, Nicholas Canyon Beach, which is north of Malibu. And it was cold. It was probably, the water was in the 50s. Okay, so I wasn't wearing a wetsuit. I decided I wanted to go body surfing. So I used to do that. So I went out there with some guys that I didn't know, and we were like body surfing out there, trying to ride some waves. And then they all of a sudden decided to go in, and I said, okay, I'll stay out a little bit longer. And I thought, well, it's kind of cold, so I said I should probably go into. And I was like doing the breaststroke, and I could not get any distance in. I said, oh, I must be caught in a riptide. And then all of a sudden, my arms got so cold because it was so cold. My arms they literally felt like lead. And I said, oh no, I'm in real trouble. And I saw this lifeguard, and I yelled, help. And he didn't hear me because the waves were crashing. Then I yelled, help, a little bit louder. And finally I thought, okay, I got to yell with everything I have. Otherwise, I'm going to die. And that's what I did. And all of a sudden, he realized that I was going down. And after I yelled help that last time, I went down. I was 6 feet under at least, and I started to see the light. I saw the sunlight and the light. I thought, oh, this isn't going to be so bad. I'm going to die, but it's not going to be so bad. And I was about ready to take that inhale, of water. I was about ready to give up. And within 2 seconds of going down, this guy somehow found me and reached down and grabbed my arm, traveling. He must have gone 80 to 90 feet in 2 seconds. Okay. And not just that, he found me amongst waves. Okay.
6 feet under the water.
6 feet under. He got me. He put me into like the crawl where they put across your neck. Says, "Just relax, sir. I've got you." And he brought me in. When I got out of the water, I still couldn't move my arms. My ex-wife was really annoyed. Not very sympathetic at all. And I really wanted to thank the guy. And obviously, I almost died, right? And I wanted to thank the guy, and he's gone. He's not there. Nobody knows where he is. It just came out of nowhere, and this was like one of 2 or 3 things like that have happened to me.
It seems like they're protecting the family members as well as harvesting the products they need.
There's no way that guy could have gotten there.
Yeah.
No way.
Which, I mean, it's kind of interesting you say that, because Shannon actually commented a little while ago saying that the Watchers are the ones that are harassing you, because she said they're not mean, but they just don't have boundaries with talking to people.
Correct. That's what I feel. That's what I feel.
Yes, exactly. They don't have boundaries. That's for sure.
and she said your alien protects. That's why he snatches you from too far into the space when you meditate.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I believe that too. Like, say, some people say, well, do you want to get rid of them? No. Oak Legley, I have this relationship, as far as I'm concerned, that Oak Legley is a protector, and Oak Legley is. I would just like to sit down and have a conversation over a couple of beers with Oak Legley. I would like to say, just let me know what you want. I'll be happy to help you. I'd be happy to do that. Just let me know what your agenda is. I'm game. I would rather know than have it a mystery. But I know that something is happening. I mean, I just know. I have so much missing time too.
So as we start to do our research on the UFO phenomenon, we immediately noticed that it wasn't lining up. The theories were not aligning with what few facts we could discern, right? The theories were at the time that these beings are coming here from distant star systems through portals or interdimensional travel or time travel. And it just didn't make sense, because we know that they come, worldwide reports are about 10,000 reports per year. And this is every year, going back hundreds of years, and in some case we think thousands of years. So the idea that they're coming here these vast distances so often wasn't making sense. And also they are almost all the alien types, in fact all of the alien types that we hear about, even the insectoids, they all have the same skeletal structure we do. And even the insectoids, we are in contact with a man who claims he was abducted by them and had sex with them, and after years of this, he was introduced to his hybrid offspring, and said, "So all right, you've had sex with this." He calls her an insectoid queen, and I said, "So we're in pretty close contact. What kind of skeletal structure does she have?" And it's just like ours, he said, exactly like ours. And when you look at the skeletal structure and how they move exactly like we do. And if they move like us, it must be because they have the same skeletal structure and the similar musculature. Otherwise, they would move quite differently than we do. And they're even mistaken for humans at a little bit of a distance. Like
12-year-olds or 10-year-olds.
Yeah, they're like either big children or small adults. And so and the Nordic aliens are indistinguishable from human beings. They just look like tall Swedes. They have white hair.
Like the Valiant Thor case with Eisenhower.
Yes, he's a Caucasian, red-haired man,
similar,
right?
Similar, yes.
And I started to surmise that perhaps they actually are not aliens coming in from a distant star systems, but are actually cousins of ours that separated from us a long time ago. And as soon as I applied that theory to our data, suddenly all the data starts making sense. Why are they taking mostly Caucasian DNA? They're Caucasians. They have a use for it, right? And why? And the Admiral Byrd stories. Ariani, the diary where he claims to have met the Ariani living under the ice sheet.
Yeah, the city under the ice sheet in Antarctica.
And
yes.
he describes them again as men, and that testimony started to make a lot more sense to us too, because uh, they consider us to be kind of barbarians.
We are barbarians.
According to Byrd, he said he quoted them as saying, we want nothing. Normally, we have nothing to do with you people and your barbaric wars, but because now you have broken the atom and you have this immense power, we have to intervene now, because this power is beyond your ability to control.
Yeah, we're too infantile to be able to control it in a logical and a adult manner.
So that made a lot of sense in their actions since then. Since then, they are dogging our military and our nuclear bases. Every single time we go out on maneuvers, they're monitoring us. And I believe that they met with Eisenhower. The meeting with Eisenhower was supposed to have been with the Nordics. And the Nordics that met with him, they wanted us to denuclearize. That was their ask, what they wanted from us. But
we wanted technology.
Obviously, we refused. And but we did make a deal with them to not divulge their secret for X amount of years, while they desensitized the human race to the idea of aliens. And we see that in a lot of our media and a lot of our
like movies
and
pop culture, yeah.
Pop culture, thank
all
you.
That type of stuff, yes.
And so we think that they made this deal with them and are they're sharing like dribs and drabs of their technology with us. And supposedly this deal that they struck was to eventually have a disclosure, a big disclosure. And supposedly the date for this disclosure has come and gone. And apparently now it's us that's keeping the secret. Our government does not want this to be divulged. And I see them reaching out to us different ways, like they're trying to
like crop circles.
They're trying to force a disclosure. And they're reaching out to the scientific community via crop circles. And I believe that's what the whole Phoenix Lights incident was about. This thing, when I first saw it, I thought, what are they, is it one of their kids joyriding? I mean, what the heck is this, right? Because they started in Nevada and flew over the entire state of Arizona, making sure to go right over the capital, the biggest city,
Phoenix, yes.
Nice and slow. And then they continued on into Mexico. So this thing just slowly cruised the entire state. And I believe that eventually disclosure will come, just because that's what they want, in spite of whether our government keeps it, or not.
I've been told by a lot of people who have dealt with the government in these type of things in some way or fashion, or know people who are in the military high up, that 2027 is going to be a big year for extraterrestrial news to break.
I hope so. I've been waiting a long time.
I mean, since I was younger and read about the Valiant Thor experience and read about how basically you just said that he was trying to get Eisenhower to stop the nuclear shit from going forward any more than it has, and
right.
Which is funny because they put this in all these movies since then to try to, the day the Earth stood still, they put it in all these movies to try to desensitize us to it, like, oh, if they say that, it's just because they're copying off movies. Like, no. Every science fiction movie that exists to some degree is based on reality. I mean, the Predator movies. The director's father was in the military and high up and saw extraterrestrials with the technology to do that. That's where the idea came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. In fact, I got I don't usually say this in most of our broadcasts, but my uncle, I told you, that was saved by Old Glegley in the RAF. He became a very wealthy man. He and my aunt, who was my mother's older sister, and they used to entertain at the top of Beverly Hills. They had this house that they had built, and Shatner would come over there, and Nimoy, and especially
And Roddenberry,
Gene
yeah.
Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry, and his wife at the time, who played Nurse Chapel. I always forget her name, but she was also on on Star Trek Next Generation. She played Oksana.
Oksana Troy,
Yeah,
yes.
Troy. Yeah. So, anyways, one time Gene Roddenberry was over there. They were having a party, and he was this is when he was making the first Star Trek, right? And he was like having a lot of trouble with the studio, and he just got too drunk, and my uncle had to actually kick Gene Roddenberry out of the party. But my uncle, he golfed with Shatner and with Nimoy and things like that, and it's kind of like we always had kind of like this, my uncle was he was very well connected, let me put it that way. But he said that Roddenberry was quite an interesting character.
So one of the things I brought to the our relationship was that I minored in college in ancient art history and studied a lot of ancient art, obviously, and I started noticing too that our knowledge of ancient art seems to be dead wrong. A lot of it is just wrong and the wrong date. And for instance, and then I read that book when I was in college. I read the book about the flood myths. This guy named Fraser in the 1700s, he wrote this book. He went around the world and collected 500 separate flood myths from 500 separate cultures. And since then, 1,200 have been discovered. We've found a lot more of them since
Hancock's
then.
work, Fingerprints of the Gods.
And there's 1,200 Noahs, right? There's 1,200 Noah Ark stories or some sort of a similar story. And almost all of them, in fact, I believe nearly all of them, talk about forewarning from God. God says, I'm going to destroy the world. You'd better build an ark or go to high ground or dig underneath. So in order for this to have been
forewarning
that they must have spotted this thing a long time ago. The one I'm talking about is the Younger Dryas comet that struck the Lake Superior area. And it was at the time we were still in an ice age, just kind of coming out of an ice age. And so this area was still an ice sheet. And I surmised that the flood really did happen. And I started looking into it years ago. And about 3 decades ago, they discovered nanodiamonds in the Uccello horizon and the Younger Dryas boundary. These are layers of soil that are 13,000 years old. And the concentration of nanodiamonds was high in the North American, near the Labrador Sea. It was very high up there. And nanodiamonds only form in celestial impact events. What happens is when a meteor, comet, or asteroid enters our atmosphere, it brings dust with it.
In its tail.
And it super heats the dust, and it forms these little microscopic round diamonds. And like I say, they form in no other way. So we knew there was a celestial impact of some kind, but they hadn't found the crater yet.
Yeah, there's a layer that's found on 4 different continents in the northern hemisphere and 10 different countries so far. That's about an inch thick. That shows that there was a worldwide in the northern hemisphere all the forests of the world in the northern hemisphere were on fire at the same time.
All on fire.
All this charcoal layer was this very, very high concentration of nanodiamonds.
So as the comet was coming through the atmosphere, it had these air bursts that caused it catch forests on fire. And so the Uccello horizon is this little layer of charcoal about 1 inch thick from that time. And then the Younger Dryas boundary is on top of it. It's about 1,100 years of showing that there was drastic climate change and climate upheavals right after the Uccello horizon. So eventually we thought that when they found the Hiawatha crater, we thought that might be the one, and I wrote it in the book and then since then, no, that one has been proven to be 48 million years old.
To be 48 to 58 million years ago. So,
but since then they've discovered the Younger Dryas comet It was only like 500 miles on the other side of the Labrador Sea. Who knew there were two asteroid impact zones?
They
There.
They dated it to 12,850 years ago.
So that's the one that caused it.
So my analogy is, it still was Colonel Mustard with the knife, but it wasn't Colonel Mustard with the knife in the kitchen.
It was in
Colonel
the conservatory.
in the conservatory. So it's still the same thing. Okay?
So I had to correct that, and I apologize to my readers who because I thought it was the Hiawatha, but it's really the Younger Dryas.
I mean,
it's no big deal.
But we think the same result happened. So our theory is that prior to this impact, the human race was a lot more advanced than we know.
Yes, we definitely were more advanced.
Yeah, remember, they talk about it with Atlantis, for instance, was this city with flying cars and very advanced.
We definitely had advanced astronomy. That's the only way you could know with 1 or 2 years in advance that there's something coming that you couldn't do anything about, or let's say maybe you would try, like in Deep Impact. Like the movie Deep Impact, trying to destroy it. We think it was like a Deep Impact scenario where, oh God, this thing is coming. What do we do to survive it? And in the movie, Plan B was to dig deep underground, these underground arcs, as they call them in the movie. And I think that is exactly what happened. And this is where the human race, we think, separated into two. The ones that escaped the cataclysm and kept all their knowledge and all their technology intact, and the rest of us poor schmoes that were on the surface and almost wiped out to a man. We believe the human race, there's a genetic bottleneck near this time period that shows us being wiped out to about 10,000 individuals. Yes, surface humans were 10,000. It's called a genetic bottleneck, which is verifiable from 13,000 years ago. So yes,
and the entire population is regenerated from those 10,000.
Yeah, it's like the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots, basically, the Aborigines.
They didn't go into the ark, with the other people, and were saved into space.
I mean, I actually 100% agree with all this. I mean, these are actually all theories I've thrown on the show before. I mean, the fact that, the Great Flood, I mean, it's pretty much proven at this point that definitely happened at some point. I mean, because it's in everywhere. It's in Japanese mythology, Egyptian mythology. It's in Gilgamesh. I mean, it's in freaking Mesopotamian mythology. So it has to be
the Hopi,
something that's there.
Samoans, they all have. Everybody has a flood myth. Like I said, there's like 1,200 Noahs. And even if we didn't know about the nanodiamonds and the Younger Dryas comet, and just looking at 1,200 different stories about this, you'd think it's a worldwide shared event. But now we actually have the smoking gun. Now we know for a fact that this thing hit and caused worldwide tsunamis, possibly 2,000 foot high. Because we think a lithospheric shift also occurred at the same time. Hapgood's theory is that the last time the North Pole moved from the East Hudson Bay is where it was last time. And he surmised that it moved sometime between 12 and 18,000 years ago. And now we know why and almost exactly when. So if a lithospheric shift happened at the same time as this comet impact, it would have just torn the oceans from their beds. Literally, you would be looking at 2,000 foot high tsunamis rushing to every coastline in the world. And
is that possibly when Pangea broke apart as well?
No, Pangea, that's an older phenomenon, much older. About 1 billion years ago or so.
Oh, okay. Well, here's the question for you then, because a very popular theory I've heard over the last couple of years doing this show is that extraterrestrials basically founded the Earth, and that we were either brought here as slaves or we were created here as a slave race. Either way, we were slaves, but we were either created or brought here.
That's the Anunnaki theory, where the uplifted, basically the
and we agree.
Homo erectus.
We actually agree with Sitchins. Now, we've been talking about the events of 13,000 years ago and the separation of the human race into the knowledgeable and the cavemen, because they knocked us back into the Stone Age. But 300,000 years ago, Sitchin says that the Anunnaki, and it's not Sitchin making it up. He was translating these tablets, these Sumerian tablets. The Anunnaki were aliens that came here from Nibiru, which is a planet that supposedly is part of our solar system, but has an enormous orbit. And they supposedly took Homo erectus and uplifted us into Homo sapien. And it looks like this may actually have happened because our genetic genomes are showing signs of tampering near the speech centers, the Broca's brain, right, darling?
Broca's brain, yeah. We have a neocortex, which Homo erectus didn't have. In fact, Homo sapien was the first uplift, and then Homo sapiens sapien is what we are currently. And that's for at least 120,000 years that we've been Homo sapiens sapien. But yeah, definitely there was an uplift. In fact, Jason Martell, in one of the lectures I went to hear, they were showing some pretty direct evidence that our neocortex was tampered with. You know, it's kind of like we're messing around with CRISPR technology, where we take certain parts of the genome, which is like 4 base pairs, and we're playing around right now with being able to negate, let's say, lifelong blindness, and we're looking at bringing back the woolly mammoth and even the dodo bird. So we have, it's a case of combination of AI technology plus genetic manipulation. We can actually do this. And so, if you give human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, a 10 to 13,000 year head start, you just look at where we are going to be in 50 years if we don't blow ourselves up. I mean, we will have AI servants in our houses, and our kids will be growing up, from the standpoint that this is all just normal stuff.
Right.
I mean, where we've gone in the past 120 years, from basically having no cars and no airplanes to where we are now, it's pretty phenomenal.
And this uplifting, it represents millions of years of evolution that happened in just a few thousand years.
Yeah, the uplift of the human, yes.
And it's an enormous difference between Homo erectus and Homo sapien. Homo erectus is still an animal, still lapping up water like chimps and apes, right? Whereas, the Homo sapien, we build houses and chairs and cups to drink our water, while we're sitting in our nice chair that we made ourselves. It's an enormous difference in the brain.
Exponential jump.
Yeah, in short time.
Makes you think that if we made this much of a jump in this short a time, we had to have some assistance somewhere. I mean, one of my
uplifted ourselves,
I mean, one of my favorite book series when I was in, I think, middle school was the first book, and it was called My Teacher is an Alien, and it was a young adult series, but I mean, it basically was based around the whole theory that Einstein and other great minds in the human race were actually aliens in disguise, and they were helping push the human race along. And I'm like, it got me thinking at a young age, like, what if this is kind of true? I mean, a lot of things that we've come up with don't really make sense. Like one human is just going to all of a sudden figure out how to crack the atom. Like, I don't think it's that easy to find out that fast, because that wasn't happening until right before World War II started. And then all of a sudden, World War II starts, and it happens in a matter of a year or two. And it's just like, that doesn't seem like something we could do without help.
It was funny because, Enrico Fermi and Oppenheimer, but Fermi, he would spend hours in a bathtub, and he would just be like, just thinking about physics and about the atom and that kind of stuff. And he came up with the idea that gave the ability for Oppenheimer to actually make it happen. Mm-hmm. And again, he was like in this, this almost like semi-trance like state. Same thing with Tesla. Tesla came up with alternating current when he was just like in a park, just kind of daydreaming.
A lot of inventors say the same thing, that where they were just sort of in a trance, or in a daydream, or actually sleeping,
or waking up from a dream,
when they came up with these ideas. And I have a theory on that as far as I think it's the Akashic record is
Yeah.
these aliens. They're not really aliens. We call them intraterrestrials or cousins because
Yes.
we don't think they're distant star system brothers. We think they're cousins that separated from us thousands and thousands of years ago, right? But they didn't lose their technology, so they're at least 13,000 years ahead of us, right? And if you look at the Homo sapiens sapien, we've been here for 120,000 years at least, right? And mainstream archaeology would have us believe that we just sat around for 107,000 years without
Without
really
building a
doing
house
much,
or building the wheel.
didn't invent anything, didn't make the wheel or the house or anything, right?
We
And then 13,000 years ago, we suddenly get smart and start
oh
advancing
I,
forward. You know what I mean?
it's like all the religions try to make you believe. We were all just sitting around waiting for Jesus to show up, but like it's basically.
Or Buddha.
I mean, that's the problem with. See, that's the thing. Yes, it's slowly organized religion is kind of slowly dying, but it's just it blinded us for so long. And why did they let it? Why did they want it to blind us? Because it was a part of daily society until about 20, 30 years ago. Like, how did it? Like, why did they want to blind us? Like, what are they trying to hide? And we said it.
Well,
The Nordics. Hell, we didn't even bring up the reptilians yet, and that's the funny part is that we didn't even bring up the reptilians yet. But
yes,
which
but they still have the same skeletal structure as we do.
They still move the same way. That's right.
We sort of believe, we're not sure about this, of course, but we believe that the Nordic aliens are kind of in charge and they utilize genetic modification just like we would use any tool.
Like building blocks.
They have no qualms about, utilizing it, right? So we think that it shows evidence in our animals, all of our animals, the animals of man, I should say. Domesticated animals. They come in how many varieties? There's like 300 dogs and 400 kinds of cow and 60 or 70 different kind of goat.
Yeah, a lot of different varieties, exactly.
And this doesn't happen in nature. There's only 2 kind of lions. There's only 2 kind of elephants and 17 giraffes, maybe. But so my point is that I think at some point they were using genetic manipulation prior to the impact of the Younger Dryas comet. We think they were utilizing genetic manipulation to make these animals more malleable to breeding in different ways, right? And if they do this, then there's no reason that they can't genetically create hybrids of themselves. For instance, the reptilians. If they need underwater workers, breed reptilians. If you need Bigfoot because you need his strength, breed Bigfoots, right? And there's a lot of connection between the Bigfoots and the UFO phenomenon. Frequently, they're sighted with UFOs, or a UFO sighting is right after the Bigfoot sighting, or the Bigfoot disappears into a bright white light, or something, right?
Disappears in the middle of a snowbank. The footprints are there and just gone.
Right, like they just stepped into a spaceship and flew away.
It has long been believed that Sasquatches, Bigfoots, Yetis, whatever you want to call them, the different species of them around the whole planet are ultra. It's been basically almost proven at this point they're ultra terrestrials, and that they can go through dimensional portals as they wish because they have the psychic ability to do that. They can. They supposedly they can talk, but I don't know.
We think they use them for sentries to guard the entrances to their underground arcs and their underground bases. For instance, Mount Kailash is one of these bases, right? Shangri-La, the ancient stories of Shangri-La, and Mount Kailash is just one big UFO station.
It's a big hotspot.
A lot of sightings there. And then on the slopes of Mount Kailash is this bizarre lake with the skeletons in it, Lake Rupkund.
Yep.
And a lot of these skeletons have their skulls are bashed in, right? And at first people thought, well, maybe there was a battle here and the winners just tossed the losers into the lake. But they're genetically testing these skeletons, and they span like 1,000 years, and they're all different races, all different kind of races. So
and
I
this is
think,
at 14,000 foot plus to this lake.
right,
Too.
way above the tree line. So we think that they may have been killed by the Yeti, who are guarding the entrances to Mount Kailash. And then, Shasta here in California is, again, it's a Bigfoot hotspot. It's also a UFO hotspot. People have seen holes open up in the side of Mount Shasta and UFOs flying in and out of it. And of course, it's also it's a UFO and Bigfoot hotspot.
The Modoc Indians and the other native tribes, that have seen them for like probably thousands of years. They just consider them to be space brothers. They don't think anything that much about it. It's apart from that, that they're here. They're part of nature. And like for instance, was it the Navajos? Or was the Hopis?
The Hopi.
Hopis that were led underground by
the ant people.
By the ant people, to avoid the cataclysm.
And ant people, the way you say ant people in Hopi is Anunnaki. That's how they say the word ant people. And Anu is ant, Naki is people. So
and then the ones
you literally are the Anunnaki.
And the people underneath the the city underneath the ice sheet in Antarctica are the Ariani.
The Ariani, yes.
Which, I mean, I find it funny that with the Hopis, like that not to go to pop culture again, but I find it funny that that's what the main alien species in the X-Files was Anunnaki, and that the series finale took place on a Hopi land in I believe it was New Mexico. But actually, Ginger has a good question for you. Do you notice more UFO activity during earthly natural disasters like volcanic eruptions or devastating fires?
Yes, we see them, and
it seems to be pretty yes.
Yeah, it's like they like to watch the destruction of like volcanoes. They're definitely seen, and they also are seen frequently hovering right over mountains or right over our pyramid structures. And we think that they actually are kind of charging their batteries somehow with the piezoelectric energy from the pyramids.
Maybe.
See, that's an interesting theory from where the area I live, because I live in Worcester County, Massachusetts, and the radon in our mountains, it's highly believed that we're a high UFO area because they use the radon to fuel their ships.
Maybe indeed. And
the
Hudson Valley, which I know it's not right there, but there's a big area there that is also a UFO hotspot.
That's where I grew up, actually.
Really? Yes.
If you like, before we quit, I would like to tell your audience what the UFOs, what they're composed of. The ones from 1947 Roswell. There's actually a chemical composition that a few pieces have been found. They've been analyzed by electron microscope. And this comes from Linda Moulton Howe, and I've actually seen the video of this stuff. So now, for reference, a human hair is the thickness of 67 microns, so it's pretty small, right? Human hair. So the outer shell is composed of the UFOs that were being flown around Roswell, 200 to 400 microns in size, combined of magnesium and zinc, almost pure. Okay, now the next layer is absolutely 100% pure bismuth, which is 2 to 4 microns in size, so really, really tiny. And this is all layered stuff like plywood. Okay, now the inner layer is made of absolutely 100% pure aluminum with nano dots of iridium, and iridium only comes from outer space, only comes from meteor impacts.
And we can't make aluminum that pure ourselves.
So this is a layered product that was found in 1947. Several pieces have been found, and this is what they surmise what the UFO shells were made out of. Okay, so it's the zinc with the magnesium, then the bismuth, and then the aluminum with the iridium. That you may not have heard that, but that's apparently what they're made out of.
And then we found one story that backs up our theories and has a genetic proof that our theory is correct. It's called The Hair of the Alien. Have you ever heard of this story?
The hair of the alien?
Yes, it's a story
Can't say I
Australian
have.
guy.
Yes, a gentleman in Australia, he awoke to a woman in his bed. There were actually two women. One was sitting at the foot of the bed, and the other was straddling him,
Lucky guy.
having sex with him, and but he was paralyzed. And she at one point she puts her hand on her stomach and points to the sky. And she has white hair, and her eyes are too large, and her cheekbones were kind of too pointy, and her chin was very pointy, like she was a hybrid being. And the other woman was, he said she looked Asian somehow. And they have sex with him, and then they leave. And then the next morning, he awakens to find this hair, this white hair, in bed with him. And he went to get it genetically analyzed. And the hair is clear, like fishing line. And humans don't have clear hair ever. Even albinos don't have clear hair; they have white hair. But when they genetically tested the hair, it tested human, except a bizarre human. It was like Basque, Gaelic, and part Chinese, but only a subset of the race, about 1% of this people. And so it's a human hair. It tests as human, but it's a mutated hair. It's from a mutated human. It's not fully human. And this fits right in with our theories that a lot of these, and so many of the sightings that we've read about, the ships are coming up out of the ground or out of lakes, up out of the ocean, up out of volcanoes,
out of the sides of mountains like Mount Shasta,
up out of ridges and mesas, and so many times they're launching. It's obvious they're launching from underground in our planet, and we know of some underground bases for sure. Like Mount Hayes is one in Alaska. The Black Pyramid base in Denali, that's another base. Again, and this is big, huge Bigfoot area. Alaska, of course, is famous for their Bigfoot sightings. Again, again, there's these Bigfoots associated with places we know they have bases.
Right.
And another base we know of is the Dulce, New Mexico. It's called the Dulce Air Force Base in UFO circles.
He probably knows about them, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
He's probably heard all about that.
And so from the Dulce papers, the evidence of this security guard who was not supposed to go down into the lower levels but did. He says that he saw these vats, like hundreds of these vats, that had like aliens, gray aliens, and alien hybrids growing in these vats. And we believe that's where they're taking the stolen fetuses they take from people to finish developing in these vats, or in places like this, like the Dulce base, where they have this technology. And why? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Which, I mean, I'm actually really, really happy you said that, what you did about the Bigfoots, because, I mean, I proposed a theory on this show when I first started it about Earth being a prison planet, and that was a huge part of my theory, is that the Bigfoots are basically the prison guards on Earth, and they're here to keep an eye on us, and that was a huge part of my theory. I mean, it was either that or the Bigfoot were prisoners on Earth as well because they were undesirable species in space. But I mean, either way.
Yeah, they could be genetically altered Gigantopithecus from their Gigantopithecus so far has only been found in certain parts of China from about 300,000 years ago. As a matter of fact.
Ironically, when we believe they were tampering with human beings and making human beings, this is the same time period where
the exact same time
Gigantopithecus was alive. Also, it could have been
Australopithecus robusticus, right?
Australopithecus robustus, is another candidate for possibly being something that they started with and then obviously turned into Bigfoot. And we don't think that Bigfoots can speak, but we believe that we know the aliens are telepathic. They communicate with us telepathically when they're abductees, when they take them. So we think that one thing, as we were doing the chakra opening work and starting to astral project, we also started to be able to read each other's minds a lot more. Stephen is already psychic that way, but he
already knew how to do that.
He became even more so. And so I came to think that telepathy is actually a human ability, but it has atrophied in us.
Like I told Leslie,
but not with them.
For instance, let's say when you think of a tree, you don't think of TREE, okay? You know, we have thousands and thousands of languages on this planet, right? But when you think of tree, anybody thinks of tree, they see the picture of a tree first. That's why the original languages were pictographic languages, then ideographic languages, and then actually, like English language is a real derivation that takes a lot more intricacy to be able to understand what TREE means. You know, these symbols means a tree. Okay, but so that's why the aliens or brothers, as we call them,
cousins.
They are cousins. They communicate with us on a telepathic level, which is much more simplistic. They don't have to know 7,000 different languages. They communicate directly with anybody. You know, from the standpoint of using pictographic languages, which is the way the brain works anyway.
In fact, the ancient Sumerian, the Proto-Sumerian language, you know, it's cuneiform later, but the early one was more like hieroglyphics, picture language.
Pictographic language, yes.
Yes.
Which, I mean, makes sense. Makes sense, because, I mean, we all know the English language is the hardest language on earth to learn if you don't speak it natively, which, I mean, we all know that's true. And, I mean, it's just, it makes sense if, I mean, because we all have these, we only use 10% of our brain, so at most. So, I mean, I know people that probably use 1%, but still, I mean, it's just, there's so many abilities we possibly have that we just can't awaken. That's why, I mean, since the spiritual awakenings have been starting over the last decade or so, like every time they happen, more and more people can find out, like, oh, I have empathic abilities. I am a medium. I am a clairvoyant. I'm a clairaudient.
Right.
Like more and more people are discovering these abilities. How long until we realize maybe we are telepathic? I mean, we all might be in some slight passive ways where, like, if you're with your wife long enough, you're with your husband long enough, you kind of know what they're thinking without having them having to say something. Like if they look at you, if they like, you get a feeling, but it's just. It's not to the point where we could actually talk in our heads yet.
I did that from day one with Leslie.
I know he pulls stuff out of my head. It's
Chinese is really very, very sing song, and they have the 5 different tones. You know, so I got a little bit Chinese. 你想跟我一起喝一点东西吗? Means basically, hey, you know, do you want to go get some lunch with me? A little something to eat. 你想跟我一起喝一点? You know, so it's like, but it's very sing song, you know.
Now cut that out. So, you know, so here we are. We've got these alien cousins living under our feet, and also we think they have bases around the solar system on Mars and Phobos and our own moon. And so in that way, they're extraterrestrial, but when they come here from there, but mostly we think they're sharing the terrestrial with us. And they have a problem, right? They are more spiritually advanced than we are. They're more technologically advanced than we are. But they have 8 billion of us on top of their surface of their world.
Yeah, they got a problem.
And so I think that's what the Akashic record is all about. I think on a psychic level, they are broadcasting knowledge out nonstop. And people are able to tap into this, and it's like they're trying to advance our race and make us less barbaric. And you know, it's a long project, right? It's a really slow and long project. But I think that's what the Akashic record is that this constant knowledge broadcast going on, trying to uplift us slowly into being more advanced. And that's why there's these bizarre simultaneous inventions. Like they might broadcast how to make a radio before we invented radios, right? They'll broadcast how to do it, and maybe 100 people are in this psychic ability to pick it up, but only 2 of them maybe have the wherewithal to act on the knowledge, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, there's that book of like 200 simultaneous inventions throughout history, and
Yes.
it's really interesting. It's
And I
yeah.
don't put
Which
that
I
in the
mean,
book. We're going to write that in the second book. But that's
I
a
mean,
theory we
it's.
have.
I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. There's a base on the moon at least. Mars, possibly, I could say the moon 100% because
Yes.
I don't believe I'm twisted on that one, like kind of conflicted. I don't know if we never went there and it was completely faked, or if we did go there and we were basically told don't come back. But I,
Have
d- I don't know
you ever read
which.
the book? You ever read the book of Jim Mars, who was involved with NASA? It's called Alien Agenda, and I read this maybe about 25, 30 years ago. And he was the first. It was the first time that I ever read about that, how the moon rang like a bell when NASA,
Yep.
a couple of different lunar, different things
Right.
into it, and it's a really good book, Alien Agenda, and it's just no nonsense stuff, and yeah, you start to look at it, and of course, it's like Hoagland with his stuff when he's talking about the dark side of the moon and what the Chinese have seen on the dark side, and it's there's something going on. Let me put it that way. There's something going on.
And we think
Oh,
that they were playing God,
Yeah,
or thousands of years ago, when they were first coming back to the surface and having to deal with humanity again. They used to play gods, right? Because we were so naive, it was easy to do, right? All they had to do was show us their advanced technology, and we would believe they were gods. And this is true. You read about this in the Watchers, that
oh,
Shannon was talking about, and also
cherry in
the
the s- cherry in the
very
sky. Yeah.
right,
yeah.
the pantheon of Sumeria and the pantheon of the Greeks. They're always 12, right? They always have a pantheon of 12 beings. And now we think that we're too sophisticated for them to play God anymore.
Now they're playing space
And
aliens.
now we think they're playing space alien. Like the Valiant Thor, for instance. He told the Pentagon, he said, "Oh, I'm from Venus." Well, we now know that's a lie, because Venus can't support life as we know it, right? But you know, the whole idea, we think, is to keep us looking up and
That's
out
it.
and away, when we really should be looking
Right,
down
exactly.
and under the ground, you know?
Which
Exactly.
which I don't know if you heard of the Hollow Earth theory, but
Oh
it
yes.
kind of lent
Yeah.
it kind of I mean I've always used it more to describe where cryptids are hiding, but it kind of lends a credence to
Right.
extraterrestrials too,
Although,
where
the Hollow Earth theory it's a bit nuts, as far as, like, supposedly there's a sun in the middle, the whole Earth is hollow, and people live on the upside down on the crust. We do not
oh,
ascribe to that in
oh
any way.
Yeah.
I don't go that far. I don't go that far. I just to me
But,
that's that going that far is right there with flat Earth theory. But I
right.
mean it's just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
whole the Hollow Earth to me. I mean I basically look at the cave systems all throughout the United States and through
Oh
other
yeah.
countries,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's a Swiss cheese, the Earth. It's
And
there's
there's a huge ocean too that we found. There is a huge. I heard about like 10, 12 years ago that the ocean they found
it's under the
inside the
ground.
Earth is actually bigger than the oceans on the surface of the Earth, which I have a hard time believing that.
I know,
But
but
anyways, we know there is a huge ocean inside the Earth, so we do know that. So
which I mean may lend some credence to where sea monsters come from. But
right.
of course, yeah.
which I
And
mean that's the one thing we didn't get into yet that I'm kind of because I mean we do got to wrap up eventually. But I mean the one the one the one thing that hasn't gotten brought up yet, and nobody has ever had a real theory on this. Where do dogmen come from? I mean, I've heard ancient Egyptian theories, I've heard other theories, but I've heard demon theories, but I mean, dogmen,
again,
like
again, we think these bizarre cryptids. It's one of two things: either they're breeding them for whatever reasons, for whatever their needs are, they're breeding these things, or it could be that, remember I was saying they tamper with memory. So
yeah,
it's possible that they're, again, I'd have to read the individual accounts of what these accounts say. I haven't studied it thoroughly, but they also tamper with memory to where you're seeing you saw a gray alien while you were abducted, but that's not what you end up remembering later. They change the face of the alien in the memories, and they tamper with the memory. So if these people seeing these dogmen are seeing them kind of shimmery, I would say it's tampered with memory,
There,
or could be like the reptiloids, where they're breeding these creatures because they have no qualms about using genetic
I
manipulation.
mean, I would have to lean more on the breeding side. I'd have to lean more towards the breeding side of anything because I mean they're not shimmery by any. They're look up when in your free time at some point. NADP, North American Dogmen Patrol. I always forget the fuck the P stands for, but it's literally a group of people. There's the United States is divided into 5 or 6 districts in it, and thousands upon. I mean, dogmen are the newest paranormal phenomenon that they've been around forever, but they're the newest paranormal phenomenon that's really getting talked about. They're basically the new Bigfoot, and I mean,
Man is another one of these really unusual cryptid kind of creatures that
I mean,
maybe what's something they're breeding.
because I could tie him back to I could tie it back, and other people have too, to Enkidu in the Gilgamesh epic.
Oh, the
Enkidu,
yeah.
Enkidu is thought to be a dogman, a highly intelligent, a more highly intelligent one than ones we see nowadays. But yeah, I mean, it's supposed to. I don't know. I mean, I've talked to one person from one of the district supervisors from the NADP, and dogmen are a real phenomenon. I mean, the Beast of Bray Road, the Beast of the Land Between the Lakes up in Wisconsin, the Michigan Dogman. I mean, there's a lot of different famous ones in the 70s, 80s, and I mean, to this day, they're still seen, and there's supposed to be at least, like Bigfoot, there's supposed to be different species of them, and it's creepy. I mean, it's basically what people think the idea of werewolves came from.
Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. You're going to say that. One thing, a couple things to interject here. Bigfoot has been proven, by the way, in Northern California. They do environmental water testing.
They've isolated the genome of Bigfoot. So there's an unknown primate peeing in the waters of California, Northern California. And that's been proven. So when you have genetic proof, then they're real.
Then why is it not a news story? That's my question.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going around in ufology circles. I went to the Contact in the Desert last June, and there was a Bigfoot seminar, and they showed the scientist, this lady who's isolated the genome from both environmental archaeology, where they take water samples and hunt down whatever things are peeing in it, and also there was an account of a man who he was confronted with Bigfoot next to his house, and Bigfoot turned around and ran, and he crashed into the wall of his home and then turned the corner and ran. And where he crashed into it, some hair had got stuck on the
paneling,
the rough wood. It grabbed some of his hair out, and from the hair and from the water testing, she's managed to compile an entire genome of an unknown primate. And there are no unknown primates in Northern California that we know of, except I can name one, one big one.
Well, it's funny, it's in California too, where the Olympic Project is, which Small Town Monsters went out there and did a documentary about the Olympic Project, and they literally discovered all these big nests that on the ground that what would be sleeping in these nests? Bears don't build nests. Like, it has to be some kind of primate that we supposedly don't know exist, even though the government, I'm pretty sure, has known they existed for hundreds of years. I mean, I'm pretty sure they said that Teddy Roosevelt back in the day wrote in his journal about seeing one.
Yeah, he wrote in his journal. Teddy Roosevelt did write in his journal about the wild man of the...
I've read that account. Yes. And also supposedly some firefighters were putting out a fire, and they discovered a burned Bigfoot carcass.
An injured Bigfoot.
Oh, and then the government, of course, came and collected it and
yeah, that's an infamous story. I love bringing up people that don't believe in Bigfoot because it's like,
And quack,
yeah,
they
it,
it
it
again.
went in it went in the ambulance, and the two ambulance workers and the Bigfoot were never seen again. So
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
And
the funny things what we found out too with our, I know we're getting late here, but what we found out
yeah,
with our research too is that it's really interesting that the mythos of the vampires and the succubus and the incubus sound extremely similar to alien abduction. When
right,
you think about it, they come in the middle of the night, they're very powerful, they hypnotize and
paralyze you.
they take your DNA sometimes again and again, and they can shapeshift and they can change your memories, right?
Hmm.
So what does
yep.
that sound like? What does that sound like?
Sounds like the aliens,
The
right?
vampire and the succubus and the incubus.
And the succubus and the incubus is more like the breeding program because I read an account from the 1600s, I think
Oh, you
1624.
are old, aren't you?
Ow. Anyway, this lady, she claimed that she was raped by a demon and she got pregnant. And later, when she gave birth to nothing but air. And this is exactly what happens with the abduction phenomenon, where they steal women, impregnate them, they start showing, they actually become pregnant, and then 4 or 5 months into the pregnancy, they take them again and steal the fetus. And the womb is completely vacuumed out. Like they don't. It's not like they had a miscarriage. It's
Right.
like somebody
They
removed
take
everything.
they take the whole placental sac. They take it as a single unit, and they'll do this repeatedly. Sometimes women 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah.
And the reason why we know this is happening because now with obstetrics and with ultrasounds, the obstetricians say yes, you were pregnant, but as far as I can tell, you were never pregnant.
Yes.
You know, and it seems to be 5 centimeters, about the size of a baseball, is the size they need the fetus to develop to before they will actually, take the time to remove the fetus.
And I
So,
know a lot of our theories sound outlandish, but that's
but
what our book is all about: is the proof that we discovered and the connections that we've made. And you know, we're frequently complimented that it's well researched, our book, and it's got in the back, it's got an index and
we got
a reference
we have a reference, and
section.
a good reference and a good index. We have both.
And when I was doing most of the writing, I'm the writer in the family. I was a journalist, so I did the lion's share of the writing, except for
Yes.
Stephen's personal family history.
And my research.
And he has a scientific background, medical background, and I needed his knowledge for the brain part of the book, the human, the ancient human evolution. But the first part of the book is like a
UFO 101.
UFO 101 class on what happened over the last 80 years in the U.S. UFO wise, because I had to assume that some people would pick up the book that knew nothing about the phenomenon, right? But we couldn't even discuss our theories without bringing them up to that level a little bit.
Right.
So chapter
Yeah.
1 is just almost like what you call it, a bullet points of this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then chapter 2 is the new disclosure policies and the Luis Elizondo and
the tic tac, the go fast, and the gimbal.
yes, and the some of the new reports that the government is for 80 years they said they lied and they said it was swamp gas or
Weather balloons.
or mass hysteria or whatever. And then right after Luis Elizondo releases his video, the Department of Defense comes out with a statement saying the phenomenon is real, but we don't know what it is. But
Lies, but yes.
all our jaws just dropped, and because they also released the full length videos of the ones that Luis Elizondo had released to the Times, and I was thinking, this is it. This is a new era of transparency and disclosure.
No,
it wasn't.
No, they're gonna tiptoe around it until they can't tiptoe anymore. Holy, Rena, are you telling me that StreamYard finally got their shit together and that people on X or Twitter can actually comment on these? Oh my god, that right there is alien technology to me. Because for the since I started using StreamYard, and it's been able to broadcast at Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. People on that could not comment. This is the first time I've ever seen someone from X be able to comment on a live. That is
Yay.
mind. That is mind blowing. That's mind blowing. I'm psyched about that. Like, I mean, I'm psyched about this whole conversation we had for the last hour and a half. But that right there just like is equal to me because it's just I never have seen people on X actually comment on a live. It never was a possibility. It used to always say people on X cannot comment, but that's wow.
Oh, they can, huh? That's good.
Thank you, StreamYard. Thank you.
Yay.
Finally.
You're not just sitting around
You
doing
finally
nothing over there.
finally popped the cherry, you know.
And no, and Shannon, you do not comment too much. I'm telling you, you do not comment too much. You bring so much life to my shows. I freaking love you. So don't ever think that's sweet.
Thank you,
I
Shannon.
beg you. But yes, why don't you tell the people where they could find where can they find your book? Where can they find you guys if they want to get you on their show for an interview? Because I know some of the people watching are podcasters.
Oh, I'd love to.
Our book is called Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. It's on Amazon primarily, and also Ingram for bookstores.
Bookstores prefer Ingram, but so it's on both.
Go ahead.
And we also Stephen's family stories. There's so many of them that I wrote them into like these little miniature series on our Instagram page. And I'd love to hear people if you want to reach out to us on Instagram and tell us your story. We'd love to hear it included in our next book. And the Instagram handle is at leslie.shaw.author. And Leslie is Leslie spelling, and SHAW and .author. So that's the Instagram. So we're also on Facebook at the same handle. And we have a website, whotheyarebook.com, where we have some excerpts, our blog, and also any podcast that we have links posted there too.
And reels too.
That's on our Instagram page. Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, trust me. I already have some ideas for reels. I'm pulling out of this one. That's for damn sure. But I honestly do not pull reels out of my paranormal interviews too often, just because I don't know. I just don't have the time. But
if you send it to me, I'll smear it all over our social media too. I promise.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely. I already tagged you in on Facebook. I will definitely be reaching out to your other socials tomorrow to follow you and whatnot, and I'll definitely. And I sent you the links to where this is live, so you guys can grab it whenever you want to. But I want to thank you for coming on, because this has been a mind-blowing hour and however long it's been. I haven't had an interview this long in a long time, but I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. It was just an amazing interview, and
an hour and 45,
it's just
actually.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate it.
Oh, and then
live long and prosper.
I fucking love it. But people have been watching this. Like this has been a very watched episode, so I freaking love it. But all my listeners, all my watchers, you know where to find me. If you don't by now, goddamn shame. It's been 200 freaking episodes. Come on. But if you don't, for the listeners, if you don't know, check the outro. For the watchers, you're watching. You know where I am. But other than that, I thank everybody. I will be back on Saturday with 2 interviews Saturday morning. I know I'm just going crazy lately. What can I say? And plenty more next week as well. So make sure to come check them out. And I want to thank Leslie and Stephen for coming on, because it's been freaking incredible. It's been incredible. And until next time, have a good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Worth losing sleep for.